Welcome to the very first transatlantic Courtside podcast. Today we're going to be exploring the collegiate system over in the United States and trying to understand a little bit more about what collegiate athletes are asking for from their parents as they watch Courtside. My name is Andy Burns. My guest is Jon Coles, the Associate Athletic Director of Ferris State University, and this is Courtside Podcast.
He's Courtside Dad, he's Courtside Dad. He dreams of Wimbledon, he's Courtside Dad. He's Courtside Dad, he's Courtside Dad. He dreams of Wimbledon, he's Courtside Dad.
So, Jon Coles, welcome to Courtside. Thank you so much for joining us.
Andy, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
And it's 2:30 in the afternoon for me. What time is it for you?
9:30 a.m. here.
That's not too bad. And is the weather good? I'm looking out the window. I'm seeing bright sunshine in the UK.
The weather is great, hopefully, yeah, and I'm glad to hear it's nice and sunny there for some tennis and soccer.
Too right. Just a few hours off the semi-final with Croatia. The nerves are building, so I'm very pleased to be talking to you to take my mind off it.
I'm glad I could give you a distraction.
Thank you so much. You're a kind man. So I'm calling from London. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
Michigan.
Yeah.
In the United States, yeah.
Yeah. And where is it that you work? Because I understand you're an Associate Athletic Director of Ferris State University. For those who don't know that geographical space, can you give us a bit more understanding?
So Ferris State is in the Midwest of the United States. We're about 4 hours north of Chicago in Michigan.
Yeah.
Really centrally located in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
We're about 12,000 students.
Okay, is that I'm thinking that's a big campus. I don't know. Is that a big campus?
Not huge in comparison with some of the universities in the United States that go upward to 40 or 50,000.
That is a lot of students, man. And you don't have as many to get to know by name, I guess.
No, we have about 300 student athletes at Ferris State competing in 17 different sports.
Yeah. And so what would those sports range from?
Well, they range from cross country, track and field, women's soccer. We do not have men's soccer, softball, of course, American football,
yeah,
basketball, men's and women's tennis. And we also have ice hockey, which is rare, but we do have college ice hockey.
Yeah, we watched our first game of ice hockey a year or so back over in France. It was an education.
That it is. It's a very different game.
Exactly, and our then 9-year-old discovered a side of her mother he'd never experienced before, with her shouting up, going, "Hit him!" So she got slightly into the game more than we realised, and on the way back we were trying to counteract her slight outburst with, "We don't promote violence."
Well, if he likes that sort of stuff, he should come play American football over here.
He might ever go. He might ever go someday. I don't know whether I'd want to see him get squashed, but there we go. That's a different story.
No, I wouldn't either.
So thanks again so much for joining us on the podcast. Why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a history of your journey as being an athlete, then coming across to Ferris State University. What was your journey in sport?
Sure. Well, I'm the son of two recreational tennis playing parents.
Yeah.
Who introduced me at a very young age. It was back in the 80s when they sawed off half of the grip of a wooden racket, re-gripped it, and were able to give me a smaller racket. But again, it was always for fun with my parents.
Yeah.
It was never trying to manufacture a great player. While growing up, I played every sort of American sport that you can think of, whether it be American football, basketball, baseball, soccer. But I was always drawn to tennis just because that's what I loved.
What was it about tennis that you loved?
For me, it was something I enjoyed with my family. It was something that I participated with my 80-year-old grandma,
yeah,
my aunts, my uncles. It was just it was always a fun game until I got maybe in my teens when it became more serious and much more competitive. So again, it was a family sport.
Yeah.
And that's what drew me to it the most.
That's cool. So how did you get into your role at kind of Ferris State?
Well, so I wouldn't have been able to obtain this role if I hadn't probably been a college athlete myself. I
Yeah.
played Division I tennis at a school in Indiana called Valparaiso University. Had a great experience, and having that experience, I wanted to give back. I wanted to serve student athletes. I wanted to make sure that student athletes had the same positive experience that I did. So after playing competitively, I then coached collegiately
Yeah.
at the NCAA Division II school. And
Well,
through
just stop
that,
it. What does that mean for an ignorant Brit? What does that mean?
well, and there's Division One versus Division Two, Division versus Division Three.
Yeah.
It comes down to how much money institutions are willing to put into athletics.
Yeah.
So Division One school is going to they're going to travel more. They're going to have more scholarship money available. They're going to have simply bigger budgets, bigger, better facilities. And Division Two does give scholarship. Maybe their travel is more regionally based. It's
Yeah.
not all the way across the country. They don't have as many scholarships. And then Division Three is no athletic scholarships. They can supplement some athletes with academic aid, but athletics and I should say competitive athletics might not be as important at the Division III level.
Yeah. I see. So you don't get promoted from a Division 2 to a Division 1. It's down to the size and the offer that the college can make.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And and Andy, I know that's coming up in a future question, so I can give you sort of the specifics of scholarships and that sort of thing too. But going back to my experience, after coaching collegiately, I then became a high school athletic director, which means I oversaw 21 sports for about 800 kids in a public high school here in Michigan. And then through that, became an associate athletic director at Ferris State, again, a Division II school here in Michigan.
Yeah. So looking at the whole collegiate system, it comes on the radar of a lot of particularly tennis parents, I guess, out here looking at that. We've had, for us as Brits, Cam Norrie, who's particularly come to our attention. I think he's currently British number 3 or 2. He went to Texas Christian University, so the Horned Frogs.
Interesting nickname, but yeah, you've got it correct.
Do you know why they're called that, or is that not to be aired?
That is a great question. I have no idea why they're called the Horned Frogs.
And I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to Google that, and then I'll post match reflection at the end. I'm going to give the answer. So I'm going to Google why they call that, and I'll message you as well.
I look forward to it.
Do you guys have a nickname?
Excuse me?
Do you guys have a nickname over at Ferris State?
We are the Bulldogs. Very traditional.
Come on. We're going to back you. Yeah. British Bulldogs. We like this.
There you go. But sure, Cam Norrie, of course, played college tennis at TCU. In Wimbledon, you have 3 college players that advanced to the round of 16.
Yeah.
2 that actually made the quarterfinals. Mackie McDonald, John Isner, and Kevin Anderson all played college tennis.
So it's a seriously high level.
Very, very high level. Collegiate tennis in the United States, I'll start by sort of saying that international players actually make up about 30% of the demographic in division, men in men's and women's tennis here in the States. I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think that's the highest of any NCAA-sponsored sport, the fact that there's 30%.
Yeah, that's huge.
It is huge. And there's a lot of reasons for that. That's probably another podcast, but I'll tell you, we're lacking an Andy Murray.
Yeah.
And Americans love the spotlight too, and the American media just doesn't give tennis the attention and the spotlight. So American kids just aren't attracted to tennis right now. But again, that's a different podcast.
Yeah, you kind of have the Williams sisters. Let's not forget how fabulous those 2 ladies are.
Absolutely, they are great role models for our young girls in the United States for sure. But going back to college tennis, teams are made up of anywhere from 7 to 12 players.
Yeah.
You were asking the difference between Division I, Division II.
Yeah.
A Division I men's team can give a maximum of 4.5 full ride scholarships. Now, to put that in perspective, so again, that's tennis has 4.5 full ride scholarships. American football teams at Division I, NCAA, they have 85 scholarships.
There's a few more people on the pitch compared to on the court, I guess, but still, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. Now, even this, women's teams at the Division I level have 8 full rides.
Yeah.
So in college tennis, women's Division I teams have 8 full rides compared to the Division I men's side only has 4.5. But the coaches can use those scholarships however they want. Just because there's 4 full rides, that doesn't mean that they have to go to 4 players. Coaches can spread out that money however they want. So let's say a year of attendance costs $20,000 per year.
Yeah.
You can multiply sort of the 4 scholarships by $20,000, and that's the money that coaches have to spread out throughout the players. So you get an idea of sort of how those scholarships will work.
Yeah. So tell us how if I've got a talented 14-year-old daughter over here in the UK, we've discussed about maybe one day I'd love to go to the States to do a sports scholarship. How does that happen? How does someone outside of the States get noticed by you in your collegiate system? Are you scouting? Are you, I don't know, Googling best young female players in the UK.com? Or, are we having to send you YouTube clips? How does it work?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying that the student, the girl that you're speaking of, must be eligible first.
Yeah.
She's got to pass the NCAA requirements. So there's a certain amount of core courses that she would have had to pass, math, science, etc., to be eligible to play. Then she would have had to take the SAT, which is standardized test.
Yep.
And NBA or the NCAA uses a sliding scale comparing sort of the test scores to their grades in their core classes to determine their eligibility. There's also amateurism eligibility requirements. So, for example, in Europe, student athletes, tennis players specifically, maybe this girl that you're speaking of, they have access to money tournaments.
Yeah.
Well, she cannot play in a money tournament and accept that money and then come play collegiately in the United States. So there are rules like that that affect international players more so, especially on the amateurism rule, than in the United States, just because the ability to make money at a young age through soccer, through tennis, just isn't available here like it is, in Europe. But going back to how we find players internationally, yes, it's best for those coaches, those parents, those student athletes, the student athletes probably more specifically than anyone, to reach out to these American coaches, tell them that they're interested, and share their UTR rating. This UTR rating is relatively new in the United States, but it's a universal tennis rating. Pros rate from anywhere from 14 to 16 on this UTR scale. A qualifying circuit type pro ranges from 12.5 to 14. Division I men's players go from anywhere from 11 to 13.5, and sort of the best 12-year-olds in the U.S. and our college coaches are probably not looking at 12-year-olds, but they're looking at 14 and 16-year-olds. Those 12-year-olds would rate anywhere from a 7.5 to 9 on that UTR scale. So it's much easier to recruit internationally now with this UTR,
definitely.
Universal Tennis Rating. But coaches are still going to want to see video of the daughter or the girl that you speak of, and they're going to want to see match video, not just drills. Anybody can look like $1 million player in drills.
Sometimes I do if I edit it well.
So they're going to want to see some match tape. But again, that UTR scale makes it much easier for our U.S. coaches to recruit overseas.
Yeah. So have you had any humorous moments of students or parents desperately wanting to convince you that they've got the next Andy Murray or Andy Roddick?
Well, those parents are usually American parents. They're not overseas parents. They're not international. So, but yes, you're right. The parents are always the best marketers, but coaches aren't interested in hearing from parents. They want to hear from the student athletes, prospective student athletes. They want to gauge to see if that student athlete really has the desire and determination to play at a high level.
Yeah.
And is mature enough to come overseas, away from their family, to make a go at this.
Yeah, it's a huge move. It's a huge move for them.
Move.
So what does an average day or week, or is it better to say what does an average month look like for a student athlete?
Well, it depends whether it's in season or out of season.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that it can really be seen as a job.
Yeah.
It is a commitment that not many 18 to 22-year-olds are willing to sacrifice. Now, in saying that, it's the best experience I've ever had. I would do it all over again, tenfold. And in fact, if I could go back and do it again, I would.
Yeah.
But it is easy to sort of get burned out with all the requirements. And you think of requirements, it's not just the on-court training. It's the off-court conditioning. It's the working with a sports psychologist. It's sitting in team meetings, talking about team chemistry, study tables. At the collegiate level, they manage your time. Everything is structured, and so it isn't for everybody. That's for sure. And again, it can be seen as a job at times.
Yeah.
But it's a very rewarding experience. You develop great friendships, and you learn a lot about yourself and what it takes to compete at a high level, which hopefully will help you later in life, when it's competing for a job, competing for a promotion, that sort of thing.
So what is the pathways here for these student athletes? Because they can't all become the next John Isner. They can't all become the next Serena. So whilst they may turn up on day one with those dreams, the poster on the wall, the reality is that isn't going to be the reality for all. So what does being within this collegiate system do for all of these athletes, whether they make it onto the pro tour or not?
Well, so in the United States, there's millions of kids playing high school sports, meaning from 9th grade through 12th grade, millions of kids playing high school sport. Only 4% of them play collegiately.
Yeah.
Only 2% of them receive college scholarship to do so. Once you get to the college ranks, only 1% or even 0.5% make it onto the pro circuit, where they can make money off their sport. So when we refer to athletes, we refer to them as student athletes.
Yep.
They always have to be students first. You're coming to Ferris State or any U.S. institution to receive your degree first.
Yes.
To play tennis second. And honestly, Andy, if the student doesn't embody that, if they don't buy into being a student first, then we're not interested in them as a tennis player. Because simply they're not going to be eligible.
Yeah.
They have to maintain a certain grade point average to remain playing college sport. And if they're here just to turn pro, that's not going to work.
No.
We're not a factory for developing pro athletes. We're an institution of higher learning that enjoys sport, that enjoys how it can market an institution and how it brings a campus and community together to rally around a sports team. But we're an academic institution first.
It seems quite a healthy way to start with constantly looking at them being students first.
Well, and it's interesting, Andy, that we're the only country in the world that gives athletic scholarship and that puts such an emphasis on college sport. But we feel that it brings people together and develops a sense of community really nothing else can.
Yeah.
And it's a model that's not going to go away as long as the student athletes continue to see it as a student first.
Yeah. So what do you think it is about the US culture that would want to give scholarships away in sport? Because it certainly doesn't happen over here in the UK.
Well, but we give scholarships for talented musicians.
Yeah.
We give scholarships to students. We give more scholarships in academic. And so American parents are so caught up in sports scholarships. What they need to realize is there's more money in academic scholarships.
Yes.
But as I said earlier, Americans love the spotlight, and academic scholarships aren't going to give these kids the spotlight they deserve, and probably deserve it more so. Well, they do deserve it more so than an athletic scholarship.
Yeah.
But that's just that's the American way, and it's not going anywhere.
No, very true. So the last bit on this always fascinates me. When you talk about playing matches and drawing a campus together, I'm very used to seeing kind of the college football scene and seeing more fans and more, I guess, razzmatazz than a whole load of European football teams would get turning up. And you think, this is only a university. This must be a great ground for a lot of these athletes for knowing how to play with pressure, with people watching them. You look at a lot of, I guess, the future tours and stuff in tennis, and there's one man and his dog watching you. You look at collegiate athletes, and there could be hundreds cheering you on. It's a whole different dynamic.
It sure is. And, just about 3 hours down the road from us is the University of Michigan, where Saturdays in the fall, they'll pack their stadium with over 100,000 people. And this is to watch 18 to 22-year-olds play American football.
Wow.
And the fanfare and that goes along with a football Saturday in the United States is like no other sport imaginable. But people are very loyal to their institution where they receive their degree. There's a lot of pride.
Yeah.
And so when your team or your university is represented on TV playing football, people get behind that. They want to see their institution where they got their degree do well. And it just cultivates them and evokes a lot of pride. And thus you get 100,000 people paying $50 a ticket
Wow.
To watch 18 to 22-year-olds.
And is it a good standard to watch?
Oh, there's nothing better for me.
True.
I actually enjoy it. Although I'm a tennis player, I enjoy watching college football more than any other sport.
Yeah, it's getting some more profile over here in the UK, and I've been watching it on the telly, trying to work it out, gradually getting there.
I don't blame you. It's confusing.
Just a little bit, but it's great theatre to watch. So you've recently finished and published a dissertation.
Yes.
On the kind of parental sport and the pressure in fostering collegiate athletes. It's I've been reading it myself. Honestly, I haven't just said that to keep you on side. And it's been a good and a really enlightening read for me. Can you just give us kind of an executive overall summary of the paper that you've written?
Sure. Well, having played competitively and worked in competitive sports for over 25 years now, I just watched a lot of different parental approaches.
Yeah.
And I've seen the whole spectrum from parents who were so overly involved that they actually hurt their son or daughter, caused burnout, to the other side of the spectrum where they're simply not involved at all. So I was curious as to what our student athletes felt was the best sport parent in their eyes. In their eyes, what is the optimal sport parent? And Andy, youth sport here is a big business. It's a $15 billion a year industry, and parents are spending an absurd amount of money on private coaches, on travel. Again, it's big business, and with it being big business, there's just a lot of investment, both emotionally and financially, that goes into this. So again, I was just curious from our student athletes' perspective, from a perspective of a 18 to 22-year-old.
Yeah.
What do they think is the best? And really came out of it with 8 different bullet points. That, if you don't mind, I can share those with you.
Yeah,
now.
please do. It'd be good to hear.
Okay. So the first one was that the student athletes who thought they had the best youth sport experience, they looked at their friends, they looked at themselves. They thought those that had the best youth sport experience, the parents didn't play their sport. Meaning, for example, I had a female student athlete tell me, I was much better off in my teens and in college because my parents knew nothing about my sport.
Yeah. Well,
We'll
that's
get
a
to
good that's a
why.
good start for us, because we know nothing about tennis, and our 11-year-old leads the way.
Well, and Andy, honestly, I was the same way. My parents played recreationally, but once I got serious, once I got competitive in my teens, they couldn't help me, so they
No.
didn't try. And I think that was a blessing.
I think, yeah, we were laughing the other day because we were filling out a form at his academy, and it was kind of just asking basics. What racket does he use? So quickly writing it down, that was easier. And then it got down to what strings does he use and what tension. And my wife just typed in the form black and quite tight, and it, that just basically went, yeah, that's their level. That's their level.
Well, you may be better off that way. And speaking of moms, the second bullet point, our student athletes thought that moms are better than dads in stressful sporting situations.
Okay.
So, for example, a recruiting showcase where you've got 16 or 17-year-olds who are playing in front of a bunch of college coaches to be recognized. The student athletes preferred their moms to take them to those events instead of the dads. Our student athletes that I interviewed felt like their dads would always try to coach them during those showcases and try to provide strategy and technique advice, whereas moms were just there to play a supportive, encouraging role. And our student athletes thought that at that age level, again, anywhere from sort of 16 and above, they didn't want strategical, technical advice.
Yeah.
They just wanted love and support. And so again, they thought that moms were better than dads in stressful situations.
I'm not going to live that dawn down now, you know. I might have to edit that section out.
And going along those same lines, the student athletes that I interviewed said that parents should be less involved with their child's sport as the sport becomes more serious. So in those teen years, they thought that parents should become less involved and let those professional coaches do what they're paid to do. They like involvement at the early stages of youth sports, sort of anywhere from 5 to 12 years old. But again, they encourage parents to sort of take a backseat to the coaches when it becomes more serious.
And does that tie in particularly, I guess, with point one, with you become less technically involved if you actually have no history in the sport itself? You've got nothing technical to share.
Yes, yes. My favorite finding that came out of it, and most important to me, one that as a parent of 2 boys, I'll take home with me, is that parents and kids should have more meaningful discussions around each of their goals for the sport. And again, this research, this finding came from our student athletes at Ferris State. I'm talking 18 to 22-year-olds. They thought that moms and dads don't sit down with their sons or daughters enough to simply talk about the experience.
Yeah, okay.
Kids, what do you want out of this experience? Parents, what do you want out of this experience? Because if they don't align, if they can't find a happy medium, then there's going to be struggle, and there's going to be conflict. And the student athletes just didn't think there was enough meaningful discussion.
Yeah, that's an interesting point to take on. Well, for me, the challenge is, when was the last time we sat down with our son and said, well, what are your goals in this beyond the usual, I want to be the next Andy Murray or whatever. No, this year, what is it you're wanting to get out of your sport? We had one interesting chat with him over dinner a couple of weeks back. Excuse me. And we said, what is it that you love most about tennis? And we're thinking, the sense of winning or whatever it might be. And he said to us, quite a surprise, he loves being left alone on the court to work it out himself.
Wow.
And you're like, all right. There was me instantly going, you mean not the trophy, not the winning forehand? No, I like in the middle of the kind of the cut and thrust of a match to work it out. And you're like, it's sad that it threw me because that reminded me it's a long time since you asked what his opinion is of his sport.
What a great takeaway and a
Not bad, is
mature
it?
response. And think about how that response will help him later in life.
Yeah.
Wow, extremely mature response. That's awesome. The fifth one was that the student athletes didn't like when the parents dissected the game.
Yeah.
Unless it was initiated by the student athlete. They really didn't want to hear the dad's opinion on why son or daughter was missing all those forehands. They wanted to hear it from the coach. It was acceptable from the coach. It's harder coming from the dad. Again, especially when it's very in their teen years and later when it's a more serious sport. But again, the student athletes really encourage parents to let the kid initiate discussion on the match or game or result. Don't bring it up as the parent unless the kid wants to.
Yeah. Yeah.
The kids talk about it with their teammates. They talk about it with their coach. They're done talking about the results after the game or match. Let's talk about where we can get ice cream or where we can get a drink instead of keep talking about the result.
Because I guess, like you're just saying there, we as parents will think this is the only time I get a chance to chat through the match you've just played, where for them, they've gone through the locker room, they've chatted to friends about it, their coach might have pulled them up on a few things, had a good conversation, and a half an hour to an hour later, then they're in the car with you, and you think it's the first time you're initiating this conversation. Well, it is for you, the parent, and you just get met with that sigh of...
I've heard that before myself.
Oh, yeah.
The sixth takeaway was that student athletes thought that the kids should play multiple sports growing up, sort of 5 to 12, that age range, and let the kids sort of specialize if they want to when they become more serious about the sport they love, the sport that they have the passion for. That the parents should not try to make them specialize at a young age, and that's a real problem here in the United States. We see when parents try to make their kids specialize, we see a lot of overuse injuries.
Yeah.
We see burnout, and it's just not healthy, both physically or mentally, for the young athlete.
So why is there such a focus on remaining with one sole sport? Is this athlete led? I'm absolutely obsessed by this sport, or is this more parent led? If you're going to make it, you've got to fix your eyes firmly just on this one track.
Yeah, it's absolutely parent driven.
Yeah.
It's the visions of an athletic scholarship. It's the visions of playing professional.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because those parents are making the decisions rather than the kids.
Yeah.
But that's the society we live in here in the United States, and unfortunately, we're seeing the repercussions because of it. That's
a societal norm is reflected over here too as well. See a lot of that here.
Yeah. The last two, the seventh is you can't. The student athlete said you can't want it more than we do. You can't manufacture us. The term "you can't manufacture us" just meaning as much money and time as you put into wanting us to be the next Andy Murray, it really is up to us.
Yeah.
We as these young athletes have to have the passion, the determination, the drive to want to make a go at this.
Yeah.
You can't instill that in me,
Yeah.
no matter how hard you try.
No. And that resonates a lot with Andy's mum, Judy Murray, who the press like to latch on, particularly in the years gone by, of kind of a very pushy parent, but yet you read her autobiography and you hear stories from Andy. He says, no, she gave me many an opportunity to choose another sport, but this was my sport. And you get the sense from her that she left enough space for them to need to pick it up, not her always putting the racket back in their hand. And that's an important thing for us, I guess, as courtside parents to always. I like that phrase. You can't want it more than me, and I guess that's where a lot of parental tensions will happen when mum and dad want it more than the child does.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to discussions and talking more often about each other's goals.
Yeah, without a doubt.
The final takeaway was that kids at any age don't like to be coached from the sideline when their parents are sitting in the bleachers. And this doesn't necessarily go with tennis, but for example, in football, soccer for us, the shoot it, get back on defense, the yelling from the sidelines, really distracts the young athlete. It confuses them, and honestly, sometimes it's different than what the coach wants.
Yeah.
The parents are not in those huddles before the game at halftime. They don't know the specific strategy for that game. So for them to yell, shoot it, possess it, whatever it may be, it may be different, and it really stresses the young athlete out.
Yeah. Particularly as you've got the athlete and the coach looking at process, and it doesn't matter if you keep hitting the net, doesn't matter if you keep hitting out or whatever. I want you to start perfecting that shot. And here's us on the side screaming outcomes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for them, an hour into their match, they're getting quite stressed out anyhow because it's hot, they're tired, they're bothered. And he's the coach encouraging them on process, and here's mum and dad going, win at all costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what position does it put you in then as the coach? Because you've talked about this $15 billion a year industry. The pressure must be huge on you as coaches because you're working with the student athletes, but it's mum and dad who are paying for this. And what strategies, how do you work with keeping the athletes on track, as it were, helping them with their development, and also kind of, in one sense, keeping mum and dad on track with the pressure that maybe they're bringing to bear on you?
That's a great question, and really, who is the consumer, right?
Yeah,
is it the youth athlete, or is it the parent who's paying the money?
Yeah.
And the triangle, the dynamics between the coach, the parent, and the athlete is so important. In the United States, it's the parents and the coaches at the early stages of sport communicate a lot.
Yeah.
But when student athletes mature and they get to the college level, there is not a lot of communication between the parent and the coach at the collegiate level. We feel like 18 to 22-year-olds can have tough, frank discussions on their own. The parents don't need to be in the room.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe sort of 13 to 17, we will involve the parents a little more.
Yeah.
But again, we want the student athletes to take ownership in their decisions.
Yeah.
So you're right on. It's a tough dynamic, and it is a balancing act. But for me, it really depends on the age.
Yeah.
And how much we involve the parent.
Yeah. Have you come across during your time as kind of you don't necessarily need to name them or call them out, but anyone who said they were the kind of parent that's the ideal courtside sporting parent? Have you come across them? What kind of personality, what culture did they kind of exude around the place when they came either to watch or when training was happening or just bumping into them?
Absolutely. I just think that the parents that are unconditionally love and support, the parents who, no matter the results, they act the same way, and they're proud of the effort.
Yeah.
Not of the outcome.
Yeah.
You can tell how what that relationship is like after games, big wins or losses, and how that student athlete approaches the parent. But again, for me, it's just unconditional love and support. Having those discussions and asking what the student athlete wants.
Yeah.
And then reacting thereof. So. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So have you got one or two golden nuggets? Kind of a summing up of all of your experience in this. I say this would be a real thing that I would love for you as courtside parents to take home. This is something that I've learned is a real kind of golden nugget. It works.
Well, I would really, there's some great literature out there, especially literature that's been done on fathers.
Yeah.
In sort of in the UK, there's an article called "Come On, My Son," examining fathers, masculinity, and fathering through football. Again,
Come on with my son. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Come On, My Son.
Yeah.
Examining fathers, masculinity, and fathering through football. It was written by Ruth Jeans and Jonathan McGee.
Yeah.
It's an academic article, but it's about football in the UK, and it studied fathers and how they pressure their sons.
Yeah.
And how fathers felt a sense of ownership in their sons, and sort of this self-symbolic theory in which they saw themselves in their sons, and all the conflict that arose from those feelings. And the golden nugget, I would just say to try to do as much research as you can and have those meaningful discussions.
Yeah.
That was the biggest takeaway from my research, learning from our student athletes. They want to have discussions.
Yeah.
And I'm at fault for this too. We don't have them enough.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, completely. There was a bit within the paper that I read where it talked about theorists have speculated from early days of psychology that parents are sometimes inclined to pass on their own unfulfilled goals onto their children. And I guess there's a whole load of projection and baggage going on from the court side being projected onto the student athletes that you have to deal with as coaches, that maybe there is some unresolved history going on there through the histrionics.
Well, and just like, there's a sense of pride, especially in fathers. There's a society status that comes with being the father of a successful athlete.
Yep.
And probably more so when talking about football in the UK. It's very masculine, and when your son isn't performing the way that you want to be represented, that's tough.
Yeah. But it's a reflection of you, or so you think.
Absolutely, you think.
Yeah.
You think, and that's the issue. So it's a topic that needs a lot more research, that needs a lot more discussion, and I'm glad you're spending the time to uncover this and do the interviews that you do, because it's important for parents to hear. We need to be better parents for our kids.
Yep.
And the work you're doing is helping us all. So
thanks, great.
Your time and efforts.
That's good. The whole idea of this podcast was just we became aware as a family of what whenever we watched him play, it invoked emotions in us. And you're like, I wonder where that's coming from. What's the root of that? Because I'm now watching you, and I've got an emotion going on that I didn't have when we drove here. and I'm not one of those screamers and those shouters, but I am aware that they go on, and it's interesting what the journey we are on as husband and wife, as parents, as we just simply watch him on the journey he's on in his sport. And it's learning the boundaries around that, what's his, what's ours collectively, and then having those conversations when emotions get drawn up, and in essence, so that we can have a more healthier dynamic, healthier relationship to celebrate in the thing that he loves doing the most. So that's kind of
it. You're ahead of most, Andy.
Well, it's good for one thing for me to be ahead of most. I'll take that one. Can I get a certificate printed off from your university on that, just stating that? That would be good. A degree ahead of most, but not the
I'll
rest.
see what I can do.
That would be brilliant. So, very last question, and I ask this of all my guests who are coaches and involved in this work. If my boy was being coached by you, let's give an arbitrary figure for say 10 years, and without wearing "I've been coached by Jon" t-shirt, how would people know that you are his tennis coach? What is it about the way he plays or the personality he brings onto a court that people would be able to say this guy was coached by Jon?
Well, sure. I would get to know your. Speaking of as a collegiate coach,
Yeah.
I would get to know your son the best I can over Skype and over emails. I'd get to know him personally to make sure he'd be a good fit for my team.
Yeah.
And then when he graduated from Ferris State, he would know the pillars that we stood for as a team. And they're really the 4 Ds. Very simple, but very memorable for my players: dedication, determination, desire, and discipline.
Yeah.
And those 4 Ds will hopefully make you a better tennis player, make you a better student, and then most importantly, make you a better spouse someday.
Yeah.
Make you a better employee, make you a better citizen of society. Because again, we're a institution of higher learning. Developing professional tennis players is not our number one goal.
Yeah.
When they can graduate from Ferris State wearing a championship ring, it's of course icing on the cake. But our number one goal is for that student athlete to earn a diploma. And I just feel like if a player, student athlete uses those 4 Ds in every facet of their life, they're going to be better off for it.
That sounds a really good place. That sounds a good place for us to end there. Thank you so much. Really did appreciate the conversation we've had. And if people want to connect with you, your work, the dissertation that you printed, can we get hold of that somewhere?
Andy, I can send it to you, and we can attach it maybe to the post of the podcast.
That'd be great. That'd be excellent.
Andy, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, absolute pleasure chatting with you. And obviously, I'll be hoping you'll be sending all your thoughts and prayers this evening to a certain English football team as we seek to get to the final.
I'll be cheering for them.
All the best. Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
He dreams of Wimbledon, he's Courtside Dad.
Hi there. Welcome to the post-match reflections with Kath and I. So, Kath, what did you get from Jon's interview?
Firstly, with the role that I have in an international school, advising students about university choice, it was just really, really helpful to have that insight and wealth of knowledge about the collegiate system. So that's really helpful from a work perspective. But for me as mum, I did nearly laugh out loud when he said about mum often being the students reflecting that mum sometimes is better in those stressful situations, sort of in a teenage or later teenage years. I think certainly in our case, probably would have to give you the award for that one. I haven't demonstrated that yet, but I'm hopeful by the time he gets to 60, maybe that will be the case.
I'm diplomatically holding the space and allowing you just to air those concerns.
So I think, so it was good to sort of hear that. But I think what I really, really loved was the phrase around "you can't manufacture us." So as in this, the student, the child, our son, that actually we can't manufacture this for him. He has to want it more. And I know that's obvious and all the rest of it, but it's very, very hard, I think, definitely at this stage of life, in my 40s, that sense of reflection on life so far for me and seeing the opportunities he has ahead of him to not want to put onto him, those great opportunities and to push for something that I think he would love and actually that I probably would have loved as well. Yeah. But actually I've really got to learn to separate, particularly at this age of reflection in life, what's mine and actually what's his. So that's a really good takeaway phrase, that I can't manufacture this for him.
No, and I when I heard Jon say that, I heard you can't manufacture me, not just the context, but me as the individual. You can't make me into what maybe your dream is for me. I have to become that and choose that. It ties in with what your reflection was there. I love the part that he said, they've got to want it more than me. as dad. He's got to want it more than me. She's got to want it more than us. And there's something around. It's too easy in that, I think, to default to the classic media stereotype of pushy parent. They want it more than the child. I was much more looking at it as kind of, what does this say to us as possibly enthusiastic parents, where we're not being what society deems as being pushy in that negative sense, but it's our enthusiasm can very often run away with itself, and maybe our enthusiasm can run away faster than maybe what our child's enthusiasm is for the sport. And what we think we're being is supportive and encouraging and enjoying the ride might actually to them feel like mum and dad want this more than me, and it could make them feel like they're being dragged into this sport, not necessarily encouraged into it.
And
Anything else?
Yeah, and I think Jon was really helpful in again bringing it back to, again, time and time again he brought it back to, it's about having those meaningful discussions with the athlete, your child, about actually what are their goals in this, because again it's so easy to lose sight of that, isn't it? And actually to have that in more regular time frames, isn't it, as opposed to thinking, oh, we'll just do it once every year or 2 years. But actually expectations, dreams, hopes, goals, all of those things can shift and change, and especially in those teenage years where life shifts and moves very, very quickly, I think it's really, really important that actually we have that sort of check-in time about what's our expectations and his, and actually what are the right expectations that we should be having, but being clear about his. So I thought that's really helpful, just to bring that back into frame.
I think for the other part for me was just hearing about the collegiate system full stop, because it's not an area I know anything particularly about. And it just seemed like if your child's journey within the sport that they love playing gives them an opportunity to go to somewhere like a collegiate system to further themselves in their sport, but it just felt more than just furthering yourself in your sport. Jon kept on talking particularly about whole life development and the character that sport brings, and being a member of the team for the college, and what experiences and joy that would bring and memories that will make for the future. So there was something that, as Jon spoke, that made the collegiate system a lot more attractive to me. For, say, Elijah, if he still enjoys hitting a ball over a net and has the ability to be at that level and wants it. But it felt more like, as a parent, if I placed my child into that context, this is more about them as a whole developing and becoming a more whole person than just simply they're going to be flogged for their sport.
Yeah, and I think Jon put that quite clearly, isn't it? The phrase, it's a student athlete. You're a student first, athlete second. Yeah.
So the important part that came out of the interview was trying to find out who on earth were the Horned Frogs for TCU, Texas Christian University, that Cam Norrie was part of. I did some in-depth research, and here we are. The horned frog, also the horned lizard, is native to the Texas area. And apparently the sports faculty, and I guess the tennis group, are named the Horned Frogs because a horned frog is known for its exceptional hand-to-eye coordination and footwork.
No, don't be
No, it's true. It's true about the horned frog bit. Maybe the last bit I might have made up. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining us on Courtside. As we mentioned during the podcast, Jon has uploaded onto courtside.org.uk his research paper. There's also links to another talk that he did on a YouTube site that we'll put a link up to that. And there's also obviously access to past Courtside podcasts if you'd like to dive in. Hope you all have a great summer, and we look forward to seeing you as the next term rolls in.